Okay, I'm going to seek a motion to adopt the agenda with the following change. For 7A closed session, so just, yeah. I'm going to change the wording to closed session to discuss confidential memorandum and specific pending litigation regarding case 2017-002261-CZ, Springer v. Macomb, County Case Number 2018-001252-CZ, Hackle v. Macomb County Board of Commissioners, and attorney-client privilege memorandum. Is there a motion? Okay, moved by Gillette, support by Lucido. Please. The motion passes 11-0. Motion to approve the minutes dated June 13th, 2018. Moved by Brown, support. Support by Duge. Please vote. Oh, this thing is, okay. What have I done? Motion passes 11-0. Public participation. Does anyone wish to be heard? Anyone wish to be heard? Seeing none, we'll close public participation. Department recommendations. Oh, I didn't get this. Hold on just a second. A, waived item, contract Florence Cement Company, Van Dyke, 18.5 to Clinton River Bridge pavement surface rehabilitation. Moved by Brown. Is there support? Support by Leonetti. Hello, Mr. Santo.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Do you just want to open for questions, or do you want to speak to it?
I'm good. It's just a standard contract to do mill and fill project on Van Dyke from 18.5 to Hall Road, or actually to the bridge just south of Hall Road, awarding to Florence Cement Company.
Okay, Commissioners, I don't see any questions, so please vote.
You're welcome, Commissioner.
Thank you so much.
Motion passes 12-0. Item B, postpone item. Budget amendment, Macomb Community Action Office of Senior Services. Is there a motion? Moved by Duge. Is there support? Support by Toko. Come on up, Gary. All right, I don't see any questions. Are there any, okay. Do you want to speak to it first, or do you just want to take the questions? You've only been in front of us like 15 times now.
I know. Whatever the pleasure of the board is.
Okay, then why don't we open up with Commissioner Gillette?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Chair, I just wanted an explanation of the dollar amount changes that are identified on the
So this
main
was
proposal.
originally submitted to the board back last year.
Okay.
So the dollar amounts are, assuming that you approve this transition, that would be for the 9 weeks for the months of August and September for the rest of this fiscal year, for 8 staff members to become, or 8 contract people to become part-time staff members.
Okay, so it's just prorated for the available time left in this year's budget. All right,
Correct.
that's all I needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, I don't see any other commissioners requesting to speak. Please vote. Motion passes 12-0. Item C, Budget Amendment, Facilities and Operations Fund 2018 Annual Capital Needs. Steve Spiegel, Director of Finance.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. What you have in your agenda packet today is a request for a budget amendment in the general fund in facilities in the amount of $1,250,000 to fund what we would consider normal, ongoing, every year capital repairs and upgrades or updates, if you will. There's a write-up on the various categories. These descriptions come from the capital plan that we submit every year. And basically, we're asking for funding in 4 different categories. The carpeting and flooring replacement program, as we refer to it as, hazardous materials abatement, miscellaneous remodeling, and a contingency account. And you'll see, I believe it's on page 34 of your agenda. There's a table at the bottom of that page showing spending in each of those categories in the last 5 years. Our year-to-date spending through the numbers on in the agenda on that table are through June 6th. I have a few updates for checks that we have generated since that date. And then the far right-hand column is the amount that we're requesting in each of those categories for 2018. Following that, pursuant to subsequent requests from the commission, there's a lot of information regarding contracts and invoices to support all of those payments. I can go through each of those if you'd like, or I can wait for questions, just whatever the pleasure of the board is.
Okay, let me go ahead and seek a motion before we do anything. Is there a motion? Okay, moved by Romano. Is there support? Support by Sagar. Okay, so questions, please. Okay, Chair Smith.
Thanks. Steve, are any of the funds that are requested, are they any of them part of the original renovation project, or is this all just
No, this is
new?
various buildings, hazardous abatement, hazardous materials abatement in a court building. So when we get into buildings, as Lynn has indicated before, we may find out that we need to abate,
Well,
you
that's
know.
for the hazardous abatement part.
Yeah, and contingency is sort of the same thing. You know, air handlers, and specifically the largest item in the contingency was an air handler that went down that we came to the board through the emergency bypass procedure.
Right.
So that was not part of the original project next door either.
Okay.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm just looking at the, I'm looking at the first bill that I see was carpet for the court. Or is it conventional carpet for the court? It has 28,005, 1,000, 1,000, 5,000. It's on page 37. So the court building though was not, that isn't part of the renovation project? That's new?
Yeah, Lynn can
Something
speak to
different?
that.
What was actually included in the base bid of the project was where they were doing active construction. So obviously, like they did this area, but then we elected to redo your carpet in the other areas. So it made sense to actually replace the carpet in the entire building.
Right.
By the time you have employees relocate and vacate the floor and you have the furniture out, that's really the time you want to take the opportunity to replace that carpet.
And that makes sense. I know Commissioner Carabelli is, and all of us agree with anything that you can do while you're in there tearing things
Yes.
up already. So, but I just wanted to check on that. The hazardous abatement, in 2017, there was a lot of the asbestos removal. Is that still ongoing with that? I mean, because, you know, in years past, 13, 14, and 15, I mean, we weren't even, you know, to $40,000. Now all of a sudden we're at 357, over $500,000, and then
Yes.
almost $500,000 requests. What do
We're
you see with?
Yeah, what we're doing is we're following construction. So they do a survey, and once we vacate a floor, they will do destructive testing. So you're testing the mastic, you're testing drywall, you're testing ceiling. And where they're finding it is in the court building, the court rooms themselves, the ceiling, also in the lobby of the elevator lobby. We also have it in the vestibule. So as we go floor to floor, then we're abating. Also finding asbestos at the jail, so we're removing that in conjunction with construction. And then we're always encountering it, like if we're making a mechanical repair, you'll run across fittings that appear to be asbestos, you have them tested, and depending on how the quantity for a fitting, you could do a glove bag, and then they can finish the repair.
So, and that makes a lot of sense. The only thing that I have to question though is, did we not, and not we as you, but did we not anticipate the asbestos and the potential abatement of hazardous when we put the money in for the court building originally? Is this extra above and beyond that? Because you said going floor to floor on the court. Is that something
It's
that's
not a
not part of the original?
No.
Okay.
No, general contractors, unless they are licensed, they stay away from asbestos abatement. So it's always treated separately.
But, so I just asked Steve, and this is, I mean, I understand that it already happened, but isn't that something that would normally be like a part of a demolition type project, that they would put a contingency in for finding, you know, this type of thing, especially in old buildings? And I know this has already happened, so we can't change it, but do we not have that in the original,
I'm not aware of.
in the
It's-
original, like,
It generally,
Go back to Lynn.
in construction, it's always separated. They do not deal with hazardous materials.
so
And
for
that's
the-
why we have
for the
that
center
fund
campus
there.
project, we didn't have any funds set up for that.
I had the hazardous materials abatement fund.
But that was just in your budget, or was that, am I missing something?
That was in the capital plan.
Okay, all right. Got it. And then I guess the last question is, the averages have been a lot lower, and I know that we're doing a lot more work on the center campus, so that would raise things up. But even from last year, you know, the asks are considerably higher in all but one of the, which is the hazardous abatement. Do you see something big going on with miscellaneous remodeling, or, you know, the contingency or carpeting is getting more than doubled? So I'm just wondering where, from 2000, from the average, I guess. So,
We create this fund, and sometimes we use all the money, sometimes we don't. We get requests from departments often. Let's say they want to remove a wall, they want to create a conference room. Then you go into the area, and there's no way that we could realistically patch the carpet, so that fund is used for this. What we're targeting with this fund is obviously some of that work, you know, in the court building that was not a part of the base bid. We also had like an improvement in the parking lot at Public Works. There was a blind spot that it didn't have a parking lot light, and we installed that. That's considered an improvement to the building. So it's a fund used for that type of thing.
so then my big question is, and this has way less to do with you and the way that you present stuff to us, because you're always, I mean, you always come to us for stuff, and I think you always know that you get pretty much what you ask for, because we know that you're doing what needs to be done around the county. We changed the way that we did the capital projects fund, because we at least felt we needed a little better, once we put the money in there, we weren't, anything that was getting spent, we didn't really know about, right? I mean, we didn't know about enough. How's that? Not that we didn't know about it, but, so we put it in there based on the fact that it's capital projects. It's certainly not emergency projects, because you know how to come to that, and we've never had a problem either on the bypass or getting you on an agenda if you needed to be on an agenda. These are capital projects that usually you have a little lead time on. And I know that our original intention, at least the way I read it from everybody, was that we wouldn't just put a lump sum in there based on, you know, miscellaneous and carpeting and this and that. We would say, well, you have carpeting coming up in 2 months or a month, you know you do it, you already put out for it. You would come to us and say, if it's above a certain amount, this is what we need, and this is what, you know, we would be happy to give you, as long as it's within the general budgeted amount, right, that they came to us for. So I have not an issue with, and I know we have general maintenance, and I think we have things to work out too, in the way that this is, that we approve this. I think that we do need to have some general money in there for regular maintenance and things like that. So I'm not saying that I'm voting no on this, but I have some concerns because I think we're going back on what we voted for in the original budget for 2018, which was come to us with these projects that are well within your sight, and we will be happy to approve them. And that way we know that what the miscellaneous remodeling was, as opposed to maybe finding out about it. And I'm talking in general, and I'm not, you're very forthcoming with all your information. So, but in general with the budget, I think that we voted on something for a reason. I don't want to see us go back to the original way, but I don't have a problem with figuring out some way in the middle on how we can actually have money in there so you don't have to turn around every meeting and come here and ask for money. But at the same time, not doing what we've been doing for a lot of years, which I think we all agreed on because we voted 13-0 on how to do it. So I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on this, but my thought is we voted for a reason on this. We've never denied the bypass process, which is always available. When you come in, when something's an emergency and it's an emergency, even the executive can give you money for any an emergency. That's not a question. And a lot of these are projects you see over the horizon well before we see them. So I'm just going to tell you my concerns right now, and I might move this. I don't know if I'm going to move this forward. I don't know if anyone else has any. Oh, I see some more comments.
There's just a few on the list.
So know that my concerns are not directed at any one individual. They're more directed at the policy and the procedure that I think we were trying to go for, and maybe that we need to fine tune that a bit so that it works out a little better for everybody, but still continues the intent that we voted on. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess to follow up on the chair's concerns, I'm not clear on exactly the process. It seems to me what we have here are bills that have been submitted for work that's been done, and I thought that we approved projects when when bids were submitted, then we would, and then you guys would suggest the winning bidder, and we would then approve it. Once the work's been done and we've gotten the bill, did we already approve the bids at one point in a previous meeting, or is this the first time we've seen
Well,
this?
what you'll notice, Commissioner, in a number of these items are that these were individual repairs or other things that are under 35,000, so there is no requirement to come back for board approval. So you'll see a number of those individual projects or
Okay.
individual fixes. So what we're asking for is some money up front, so we don't have to come back for a $14,000 item or a $10,000 item or a $9,000 item.
Okay, so these are things under our that are below the threshold in the policy.
You'll see, particularly with the contingency, I think we've spent, we're asking for 300, and we spent 183,000 in there all so far this year. One item was almost 138,000, which was an air handler, which we did go through the bypass procedure, and so we did that. The other items in there are all under 35,000 if you look at your detail. Could be various things.
Gotcha. Okay, that brings up, I guess, another question. I mean, there might be a project or renovation that might cost $100,000, but each piece of it, carpeting, HVAC, different parts, electrical, might all be under 10,000, and then it ends up being a large amount. I'm not sure, not specific a question to you perhaps, but I'm not sure how our board then, would view that under the policy. And then just out of curiosity, I'm looking at Metro Electric's bill, and they're charging us for electrical labor $73.80 an hour. Was there a competing bid on that? I mean, is that what we're getting electricians? I know we're short on electricians out there, but were there any competing bids?
Definitely when you have something that relates to the downtown project, they took bids. So they are actually reviewing this also. This was additional work. I think you're referring to the one of the fire alarm system, the sprinkler system.
It says install 4 ceiling mounted,
Yes.
5 mounted horn strobes, and 1 pull down station, fire
Yes.
alarms.
In the downtown project, we're getting a new control panel, and we're bringing everything up to code, so essentially a new system.
Okay.
But while we're going through the renovation, each floor, we had 2 panels. We had the old panel in operation and the new panel in operation. And what was happening, and then we had a controller, a communications board that did not work. So do you spend the money to fix up the old panel and try and get it back online, or do you go ahead with the installation on 2 and 3 when we haven't done the renovation on 2 and 3? And what we weighed, certain communities, or probably most communities, when you have a certain number of false alarms, they will start to charge you. So we weighed that, and it made sense. And what it's called is a temporary installation, because when they get to the 2nd and 3rd floor, they're gonna pull that wiring back so it doesn't get damaged in demolition. And then they'll hook it up again. They'll also do the placement correctly.
Okay.
So it was a judgment call, and we also wanted an operating system. We didn't want a system where 2 and 3 had virtually no fire
Right.
alarm.
So I'm glad that you're in place that they have the experience to make those kind of judgment calls that long-term are in our best interest. It just, is $75 an hour the going rate for an electrician nowadays?
Yes. And it's
Wow.
also reviewed, because this also involved the downtown project, even though it was beyond the scope. You've got Plant Moran looking at it. You also have Clark Construction verifying the prices. So they're scrutinizing the prices quite closely.
Okay. Well, thank
And
you.
we did actually get another price informally for our own peace of mind, and that one was about $35,000. So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. I appreciate that response. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Romano?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Briggs, I think we should make you our general contractor. You do, I have to tell you, you do know your P's and Q's when it comes to what's being done, and I commend you on that. But I kind of piggyback on what Chair Smith said about the projects being done, and I'm going to pick on one particular one that I was looking at, and that was the asbestos abatement. And I'm looking here at a project at the court is 35% done at a cost of $51,000. Yet, if we completed that in percentages of 35% and add the other 35 plus, you're talking a lot less money than the $400,000 that's being budgeted. So, I'm sorry, that's right, $400,000 being budgeted. So, again, piggybacking on what Chair Smith said, in lieu of coming up with all this money at one time, the percentages would work out to a lot less than $400,000. And I realize that any excess money, if there was there ever any excess money, question number one, I take that that's returned to us. And question two is the excess money used in different departments? I mean, is it going to be utilized? I'm looking at invoice from Environmental Specialty Services Incorporated regarding the court building asbestos abatement project 35% complete, and it's a charge of $51,000. So using the percentages, it's going to be a lot less than the $400,000 that was requested.
Yeah, there's also a consultant, and they do the survey, they do the test samples, they do the monitoring during abatement. But that is just the court building project. Now, we did go out for bids for abatement, and I believe that should be attached in your packet. But we also have construction going on at the jail. We also have different requests when our tradespeople are doing a repair, and it looks like it's asbestos, or you open up a wall and there's some concern when you see moisture. So it's actually for a multitude of buildings, or any time we have a concern for safety in the building.
So it's just not the court building as it looks. So anything
Right.
else that comes up under that category, any excess money can be utilized immediately for that particular abatement?
Yes, that's what the
Good.
fund
That's all
that
I
we
need.
use it from.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Romano. Okay, I just have a couple of questions. I was looking at that carpet one. What was that, page 30? And maybe it's because of the way I go through things. That I wasn't sure. This was dated February 27, 2017, the 42,412. And it says Central Campus renovations. So is that carpeting, page 39? The pricing proposal at the top says 16th Circuit Court Building Central Campus renovations. Yeah, it's from February, and so I was trying to figure out, like, why this is in here.
This is doing the balance of the carpet in the building. Plant Moran and Clark, because they had just gone out for bids for carpet, got a price for us. We actually, he thought it was a little high. So contacted purchasing to see if there was a vendor that we work with. And they gave him a name and they asked him for a price. So a part of the base bid, like for the 5th floor, is half the carpet is in the base bid. The other half was not going to be replaced. And as I said before, it's the opportunity to replace it when people have vacated a floor and the furniture's out of that floor.
Okay, so on page 39, the 43,412.
Yes.
You're not seeking that. This was dated February 10th. So this document, what's the relevance of this document?
The purchase order,
Pricing proposal, page 39.
that backs up the purchase order.
For the stuff that you're seeking from us or for the Central Campus renovation?
Is for the balance, it's for the 5th floor, one half of the 5th floor.
Okay, so did we vote on that? On that 43,000?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so I was looking at that, and you, as Steve indicated, broken down in different dollar amounts under 30,000. But when you have, when you've got carpet adhesive, installation of carpet tile, installation of broadloom carpet, and it's all broken down into individual, but the full project is 43. And I'm not here to beat anybody up. I'm trying to find out, Steve, is this something that we would have, if it's not part of?
In 2017, if you consider this part of a construction project, the limit was 100,000 back then. For budget adjustments and such for construction projects, but as I recall.
Okay,
But I'm not sure if that's, I don't believe this
Yeah,
came
I
here, but
thought
that would have
that-
been the rationale, I'm sure, at the time. I don't remember the specifics about this particular purchase
okay,
order.
and understand, I'm not concerned about going after anybody or anything on anything that's happened. I'm just kind of looking at where should my process
Right.
be in the future. So that's the reason for my questioning, because I don't believe anybody did anything, you know,
Right.
okay?
And if I
the-
could add, the payments that you see in 18 are against that purchase order. Because they're following the construction, so even though it was issued back then, the actual work, because we're following that construction.
Yeah, what you'll see, Commissioner, is on page 37. So we needed to make those last two payments of $5,085 and $1,140. So that's what we need the funding for, because we made those payments. The rest of those payments against that PO were made
Is part of
prior to
the,
this year.
it's only 6,000, yes.
Right.
Okay, and then, on the abatement, did we contract did we choose the contractor? Did that go to, in front of us for the asbestos abatement? Oh. I know it's as a result of things that have, were found in the downtown project, and absolutely expected that to happen. What I'm just trying to figure out is, so then did we vote on the asbestos abatement, or was it done through the umbrella of the downtown project?
You did not approve the bid.
We did?
You did not.
We did not, and that was
believe the bid
that was
is attached.
148,000?
Right.
Okay. All right. I think that's, okay. Thank you. Chair Smith.
So let me just ask this to Steve, because I think, I just want to make sure this is right. When someone comes in for this much money, who decides whether it comes to the board for, whether it meets or doesn't meet the criteria for the ordinance, that now 35 before 100, right? Who decides? Does that come from finance on whether it has to come to the board? I don't have this, or does the individual department head say, well, do they need to know the exact rule, or does it all come to finance or through the executive's office as to when a project has to come before the board for approval? Who actually makes that decision besides us if we happen to see it?
Yeah, so the process is with this, or any contract in general, would start flowing through risk management, my office, corp counsel, eventually to the exec's office.
So when they get a bid.
And then it goes from the exec's office here or not.
So, but let me ask you this. Let's just look at this like this just happening right now, this carpet. The way it's broken down right now, nothing reaches $35,000, but it's obvious that it's one project that exceeds $35,000. My concern, I guess, is that how do you see this? Do you see this as something that would have to come before us? Or do you see this as a bunch of different broken up parts that don't equal 35,000? Because I'm not going to fix it here, but that's part of I think the issue, and part of the thing that we were trying to address with this is that I think we might have seen a few things that were broken up, that month to month stayed under whatever threshold was there and didn't get to us. So my question on something like this, based on 35,000, would that be a recommendation from you to whomever submitted this, that they would come to the board for this? In the future, say it's a
On its
future
surface,
project.
it exceeds the $35,000 threshold, so I would think that it would come. I don't know the specifics about this particular one. I wasn't involved in
No,
it.
and this was
so-
before it was 35,000, so I'm not saying,
Right.
I'm not saying the past. I just want to know what your opinion is of, not opinion of our ordinance. I'm sure I have. I'm sure I don't want to hear that. But,
Interpretation, maybe?
yes, that's a much better word. So sure, go ahead.
Okay, you just gave him, it goes to this, you, and then the county exec's office. I just want clarification. Do you make a determination when it's at your level that it has to go in front of the board, or do you just forward it on to the county exec's office, and the county exec's office makes the determination that it does or doesn't go? I'm just looking for the process.
Typically, that decision's, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, ultimately, when it goes through the contract routing process, we sign off on it last, and we determine whether it goes to the board or not. But let me back up here just a little bit, because a lot of the things that you're talking about here this afternoon is somewhat of an anomaly. For years, this Board of Commission has appropriated money, transferred money from the general fund into capital projects, and there's never been a concern about how that money was spent until we started the Central Campus renovation project. And again, and you said it today, it was the desire of this board to go in and do anything that we need to do that wasn't budgeted for as part of that Central Campus project. We did that. Carpet was one of those things. The stairwells were something that, the collapsed stairwells was something that no one anticipated and was going to, and did cost $1 million. And guess where it came from? The Capital Project Fund. It means that we did and had to do what we've always done. And even though we say that something needs to be done in 2018, if we can get more life out of it, we push it to the next year. So we pushed more dollars off to the next year. As far as the asbestos abatement, yes, when asbestos is found above the ceilings, guess what? All the contractors walk off the job and they don't enter the room. The job is now delayed. It's stopped. And for every day it's stopped, it costs the county, in our case, it costs more money. Not only did we spend $1 million to repair the collapsed stairwells, but it put the project 6 months behind. That meant Clark and the architect and whoever else was involved under contract for a specific window of time was now delayed 6 months. And that's what drove part of this cost up of this project. Our intention was to get the abatement contractor in there ASAP. Should it have come here? Yes. Could it have gone through the bypass process? Yes. But you know what? We're not perfect, and it's something we probably erred on. But 3 months ago, I met with a group of commissioners, and so did Executive Hackle, and we expressed some of our concern about the stipulations, the criteria that has been put into the appropriations ordinance. Every year there's more strings. We don't understand it. Contracting policy, purchasing policy has been changed with different criteria and different threshold. We asked for your help. And during that meeting, all the commissioners that were there didn't even realize that the appropriations ordinance had some of these mechanisms in it that really slows things down. And you vowed to do something about it. And here we are now 3 or 4 months later, and nothing's happened. The executive's office wants to sit down with the commission and try to develop something that's going to work for both sides, because this isn't working.
Thank you.
I don't have the
and I'm
floor. I just wanted the clarification on the process of where it goes, so.
So, just to your point on that, I think we all agree, and we've talked about it, that there needs to be some fine tuning of this. I don't think that there's any question about that. I think everybody realizes that we've discussed having, each individual department maybe have their own capital projects budget, which would be easier for the board to understand each capital project outlay as opposed to one big capital project budget. We've discussed that. Hopefully that's something that will be coming in the future budget presentations. We don't have, and I don't think there's one commissioner here that has a problem with sitting down, furthering the discussion. At the same time, always reminding that we're not slowing up government when we have the bypass process in place, and we've always had it, to make sure things keep moving at the right pace while we're trying to figure this out. So I'd be happy to talk to you after this about an actual date to sit down again and see where we've come with some recommendations, because there's some give and take, and numbers are as important to us as to you. And we've sat down before, originally 7 years ago, with the $35,000. I believe it was Pete, or I'm not sure who was there, that we came up with that number together. I will say this, that I'm sure all of you in business have evolved over the years, right? So, I mean, just because you've, Rob Leonetti, just because you had your client contract one way 7 years ago, it doesn't mean that it stays the same in 7 years. We all find reasons to change and tweak and make things at least what seem to be better. And I'd say that's what the board's been doing, to make things better, at least on what we believe that we should be doing here. But I don't ever say from this board, as far as I can tell, that what we say goes, and there's no flexibility in it. So, I mean, to sit down and come up with something that makes sense, I don't have an issue with. Problem is, you maybe forget the rest of the things I was going to ask
That's
Steve,
okay.
and I'm not happy about it. But
That was my goal.
Here, yes. But so part of my concern, I guess, is, there's $6,000 here. It's not a concern, but I mean, that's not in part of what you said was carried over from last year, because we already knew we were in the midst of this, so I don't know why this wouldn't have been something, because we already owed it, basically. I mean, I don't have ever a problem giving Lynn money, especially for money we've already spent based on things we've done last year. I'm just not sure if 1.25 million is that number that we need to get to catch up so that we're not holding anything up. We don't want anybody not to get paid. But we're looking for the rest of the year's budget in one lump sum, which is what we kind of tried to get away from, Mark. And I'm not saying
Well-
that with each, I mean, maybe there's $1.25 million that you can actually come up with and say, here's what we're doing, here's what we're doing, here's what we're doing. We've got the bids out, we're all set to go. I think this board would be happy to give $1.2 million right now. And I know some of these are just ongoing things that come up, so you probably can't come up with that 1.25 million. Personally speaking, I think besides the incidentals, which I think we do have to fund, I mean, without having come back all the time for this. But I think in general, in the big picture, these are capital projects that have a horizon that we see coming most of the time, and I would like to see those come to us, not just dump it in there. And that's kind of the discussion that I think we need to continue on with, probably outside of this meeting.
Right. I would agree. I would agree.
We are not here to say it's our way or the highway. I think if we can come up with a happy medium that makes sense, and I think there is one somewhere in the middle here. But that's the point. It has to be somewhere in the middle, I think, where everybody feels like, you know, someone gave a little bit in this.
And this isn't budget presentation time, but one of the things that our office has talked about now for quite some time, because the appropriation ordinance, has more requirements in the purchasing and the contracting policy, we almost, and I'm not being facetious when I say this, in order to keep track of all this and give the Board of Commissioners the required transparency that they put in their policies, we almost need a small Office of Contract Management, someone that can track that per your requirements or policies, that every time there's aggregate purchases of $35,000 from one vendor, it's got to come before the board to be approved. That every time there's aggregate purchases of $10,000 in a year, that vendor has to be listed online. I mean, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. But there are so many requirements that it's going to take a separate department to track all this stuff.
Okay, well, I
I'm
would
just
say
throwing
that.
it out there.
I
It's not for
understand.
today's
I would say
discussion.
that the requirement is $35,000 across the board at this point, which makes things simple. And it means if you have a contract that in aggregate, like this right here, would total up to more than $35,000, which is very simple to see because it's all on one page, that would be easy to see that it comes there. And I'm just pointing out like what mostly happens, right? I mean, mostly this is the kind of thing that happens. It's either over 35 or we have a bunch of separated things for one project that equal over 35. It's far less, I think, that you go a contractor today and then 3 months from now, you didn't realize you were going to use this contractor again, but you used them again, and then you would have to submit that. I mean, that may be missed once in a while, it may be, but it's pretty easy to timeline to follow. If we use you for this same incident, more than $35,000 in a year, we have to get back to the board. And then lastly, the one nice thing about our agenda management program is that if all of those were put in there that we don't have to see, when they did get to the point where they aggregated over, it might just be our responsibility to say, hold on a second, we're over that. So maybe we would be, partially there to help on that front. I mean, this agenda management system, way back in the day, I know that, you were more a part of looking at it, and it has a lot of capabilities to keep track of a lot of that stuff and have it easily pulled up. So, I mean, that's just a thought. But we're not here to try to make things difficult, which is why I guess we should meet again sometime in the next few weeks on this stuff.
Again, just to, what's before you here today, we're obviously looking for your support on it. Lynn has many projects this year that have been on hold because there's been no funding in there. We also talked a few weeks ago when we met in the other room about some of these routine things. We are going to replace carpet every single year somewhere in the county. It should not be in a capital project. It should be part of her F&O general fund. And same with abated materials, hazardous materials. But those are the kinds of things that really need to change. And it's been like that forever.
I agree, and I think we've discussed that that's something that, especially the ongoing things.
Right.
I do want to go back to projects that have been on hold because there's no money. Lynn, have you ever put in a request early on for a project that's on hold for money that we've refused to put on the agenda or to give to you? I just want to point out the fact that the only way they're on hold is because no one has submitted them to us as projects to give money to.
I can't, look, it's not our desire to come back up here every time we have a project. When we submit a budget to you, it is an annual plan. It's an annual plan. And if you choose to zero it out, then there isn't going to be any money in that account. And
With
But you're
that, I
using
guess
the
we're going to have to talk
concern-
more. But the concern is that
You're
we know
using the
concerns.
concern of the central campus renovation and all of the unforeseen projects and money we had to take from the capital projects. You're using that example to now change the appropriation ordinance on how you dole out money for the capital plan. It's your prerogative, but it's making their jobs very, very difficult. But it's your prerogative.
And I'll end that, and we could keep going back and forth with, it's not that difficult to put in an agenda item for, we discussed this, and if we have to change the amount for capital projects, again, based on our coming together, that's fine. We did come up with a number a long time ago that was not a crazy number over the top that would cause them to have to come back every month or every, week for a bypass. And I'll speak for myself, obviously, that I could live with the number that we thought was reasonable, but that it wasn't just the cap. It might have been the capital plan that opened some people's eyes to maybe that we should be looking at things a little different. But it's not the capital project that we're holding everything, in hostage for down the line. We see
There's
that
no money in it. There's no money.
But
There's no
we're-
money
we're-
in the capital
We're very
project.
easy to get money from if you come and make the request, and that's all I can say.
Again, it's not our desire. We've never had, it's
I
never
am
been
going
done
to
this
interrupt
way.
because we have a list of speakers and we need to get on and you, okay. Okay, I will call on you again if you want to speak again. All right, Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. On the process, Mark, this is for you, Mr. Sheldon. Just to understand the internal process, how you work these things through. Your department heads know there's a policy for $35,000 for approval, or they know what it is. Is there like a sheet that they say, well, this has to come before the board or commissioners for approval? Is there anything, because you got many things on your plate, right? So if somebody sends you something, we need this to go before the board for approval. Is there any checkbox that says, this project needs to go over because it's accumulated over 35,000 or meets the threshold because it's cumulative, like the carpeting, or all those various price, all of those various invoice amounts obviously went over the $35,000 number. And you looking at it individually, you say, well, that doesn't seem that bad, so no issues. But is there they want to be held accountable to let you know that these projects are going to go over $35,000, like Jayco and IT's got a big project, he knows it's going to cost him maybe $85,000. Does he say on there, like a red flag that, this needs to be approved per the purchasing policies?
By and large, all the department heads and elected officials know there's a $35,000 threshold. There's many other things that are stated in the purchasing and contract that not even they understand as well, and it is ever evolving. So it's a lot of work.
But it's not that hard to understand. $35,000 has to come before the board for approval.
Right.
There may be a lot of little things that may be hard to understand, but generally, that's pretty easy to understand, right?
Right, right, correct.
So, but if there's something that needs to be corrected, it isn't able to understand, I don't know, we should probably work on that, and we certainly can do that, but I just was curious to make sure I understand what the process was. Everyone does know there is $35,000 purchasing policy, and that needs to be followed until we to change it otherwise, right?
Right.
All right, thank you.
I welcome the opportunity to work on it with the board.
Thank
I'll
you.
definitely help you with that.
Thank you. Commissioner Duje.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Being in business, I'm glad I don't have to go through all this nonsense. I understand the money, I understand the process, I understand all of it. How old was the chiller that we needed to replace? And this is something that I think the board really needs to understand.
It was actually the original,
20 years?
older than that.
40 years? How old was the carpet?
Some of the carpet was probably from the 90s. We don't create an obsolescence point on
Okay,
carpet.
the point that I'm making is this. We have a lot of buildings, a lot of square footage, a lot of things that need help, and the chiller was an emergency. I don't think anybody in the world could have given us some kind of number for what the asbestos abatement could have been. Nobody. There was not a company around. And I actually have seen everything come to a crashing halt because of asbestos. I don't think 1.25 million is out of the realm of reality. I think it's reasonable, considering all the buildings and all the square foot. How much square footage does the county have?
About 1.8 million.
Thank you. Based on that, I don't have a problem with any of this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and first express my appreciation to the Chair of the Board and to Mark Delden for their willingness to get together and try to find a way to streamline the process. I recognize it takes a lot of patience to try and work through this, but I would encourage both to recognize that we really just have two sort of concerns, or at least I do as a commissioner. One is that the charter creates the executive and the Board of Commissioners as a checks and balance system. And it's set up that way that makes work for us. You know, sometimes it makes more work than would be expedient, but nonetheless, it's set up as a checks and balance for the purpose of us, reviewing work that in most cases that probably doesn't actually need to be reviewed. But if it's those few cases that it does, that system is, that process is set up for us to be the fiduciary check. And second, just politically, we're going to have to accept responsibility for that. So if there is something that goes wrong, intentionally or unintentionally, most likely unintentionally, it's our constituents that are going to hold us accountable for it, because we're put here to be in charge of the budget and fiduciary process. So while it may slow things down, while it may make things inconvenient, that's how essentially the founders set up our United States system of government, to be a little slower, to be a little less convenient, but for there to be checks and balances. So let's not put expedience ahead of doing our jobs. And I'm sure that I hope that something can be worked out that does it in the most cooperative way possible, in a way that makes sense to everybody and everyone understands what the expectations are, because it's frankly our job. So just encourage you both to keep that in mind when going through and trying to work out an agreement so we can make a better policy. So thank you.
Chair Smith.
Sorry to keep belaboring this, Lynn, but Deputy Executive Delden said there's been projects that are on hold because of this new process. And my question is, are those projects in this right here that we should be looking at? I mean, I think you know that this board doesn't want to hold anything up that needs to be done, or that we have the finances in general fund, which, to move forward with these projects. But these projects that are on hold, I certainly don't want to hold any of those up. I certainly don't want to have anybody that is owed money that we don't pay money. And before getting to what end we're going to get to with the executive's office, whether I go for $1.2 million at this moment or some reasonable sum that gets you going on everything you need to go on, I just want to know, do you have a number of who we owe and how much we owe and what projects you're looking to get started on that we obviously would probably want to see bids on, but that we could look at? Because You're right. I'm willing to come to, I mean, and I think the board, anybody that wants to be on that committee, please let me know, to sit down and talk and figure this out. But at the same time, I don't think that going all in before we have that meeting with the 1.25 million is the way to go. I mean, so my question is, does $400,000 bring you through till next month without a problem? Does or does it 1.25 million, or things are, going to fall apart even though we have a process to bypass that? So my concern is I just want to fold and say, well, okay, here, take the 1.25 million, even though it's not the way that we had planned this when we voted on the budget last year. But I don't want to hold things up. So I don't know if you have a number, if you have a group of projects that you can off the top of your head say, this is what I think. I mean, and maybe I'm the only one thinking this and everybody else is going the other way, and that's fine. But for my purposes, do you have a number of things that are hot on the iron that need to get off and we need to get moving on?
Well, certainly there's projects in the capital plan, and I think I had mentioned it when we met a few weeks back with a couple of the commissioners. I need to spend some money in order to develop the formal bid specification. And I did proceed with that. We're getting the inspection done of the court building. But when I get that bill, I obviously need to pay that bill. But obviously there'll be formal bids for the actual project.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
It makes sense, and I agree with you. I just don't know and I know I'm putting you on the spot because, and if you don't have a number off the top of your head, that's fine. But I'm just wondering, because I know the 1.25 million is for the rest of the year. We probably have, 35 meetings or more between now and the rest of the year to keep increasing that amount without holding anything up. So I'm just looking for maybe a meeting in the middle at this point so that we can have our discussion on our, for the rest of this year and how things should work. And then obviously budget time's coming up with hopefully a little new process.
Yeah, let me clarify for the commissioners. The 1.25 million is for the whole year. We've spent down against that. We're drawing down on the carry forward money that's been earmarked for other projects. So back to our previous discussions about robbing Peter to pay Paul. So we're not asking for $1.2 million for the remainder of the year. It's $1.2 million, and we've spent down against it. So at the beginning of this, what I intended on doing was, which I'll do now, is to update what we spent in all of these categories since June 6th when this table was put together. And that'll shed a little more light on what's really going on here. So on the carpeting program, the request is for $250,000. When this item was submitted, we had spent $20,000. And we've now encumbered another 41, so we're at like 60,000. That's, so another 190,000. Hazardous materials abatement, which has been a topic of a lot of discussion this afternoon, we're asking for 400,000. When the item was submitted to the board, we had spent just shy of 98,000. We have now spent $310,000. So we've generated another progress payment on that purchase order. We've also paid the consultants 2 or 3 checks. So we spent 310, so we still have 90. That'd leave us 90, if you will. Miscellaneous remodeling, there was another 15,000 spent on, I believe, in the court building. So that brings that year-to-date up to 41,000. And the contingency, all we're asking for is the difference between the 300,000 and the 183,000 that's been spent. So the remaining, so we're asking for $1.2 million. We spent about 565, robbing Peter to pay Paul again. So that would leave us about 685,000 remaining for the rest of the year.
Okay, so I think Commissioner Kleinfeld might have something to say, but your initial statement, I think, said the most, shedding some more light on this and making it a little more understandable. And I don't know if maybe if the executive's office would be willing to do this, but even having a little side committee or something to kind of meet with the finance department so that we understand these issues a little better. I think before the meetings is probably, what I would recommend would be one good step towards letting the board
Yeah, I
really
think if-
understand, because
Yeah, at the very beginning of this whole agenda item, you remember I said I have some updates, and then we got off on different tangents, so I never got to the point of
I don't mean,
explaining
yeah,
what's going on
I don't mean
there.
just this. I'm just talking in
Yeah.
general, because there are a lot of these things that you as a finance person understand a lot more than we do. And
Right.
we get something and we look at it, and it makes this much sense to us and this
Right.
much sense to you. So, all right, thank you.
Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I guess, Steve, when you came up, you kind of answered a lot of my questions that I had. But, you know, and I was kind of sitting back here listening to the chair and listening to Deputy Executive Deldon, and both, you know, have good positions. I certainly get the executive's point of view. He's saying, look, we budgeted for this whole amount for the whole year. So, you know, it's already, why do we have to keep coming back each time when we've budgeted this amount for the whole year? We're not asking anything more than what's annually been budgeted for the capital outlays. On the other hand, we all have a fiduciary obligation to take a look at anything over $35,000. And so there's been those discussions to try to see what we can do when it comes to the capital outlay projects. So I guess, Steve, with what you said, is it possible now, you say there's about $600,000 left over yet. So if we gave you $600,000, about half of what you're asking for now, if we made a motion, if somebody were to make a motion today and say, okay, we'll give you $600,000 of that 1.25 that you're asking for, then it's not going to be any foul if you have to come back for the remaining $600,000 and show us, you know, what else you're looking for the rest of the year. I mean, is that, it may be, as Leon said, it may be inconvenient, but that's part of the checks and balances, I guess. I mean, is that something that's out of the ordinary here?
Well, we need an adjustment for what we spent already, which
Okay.
is about $565.
Okay, so we give you
Plus, we need some more left for the remainder of the year. The $685 gets us through the remainder of the year, in my opinion, without coming back to the board in the instance of something under $35,000, which I'm not sure what those things are. They pop up all the time.
And that may be something we have to iron out. I mean, that's
So
something that the
certainly
commission.
anything over 35,000, we're gonna come back to you for, but that 685 is in various categories. So, for example, hazardous materials are maybe at $90,000, that we could run into something tomorrow. That's
Right.
over and above what we've already run into.
And if you had something like that, of course, we do have the bypass procedure that would allow you to come in. But what I'm saying for today, we've been bantering about this for about an hour, and both sides have kind of given good positions, and I understand, want to keep things moving forward. Everybody does, and I understand checks and balances. But if we were to say, okay, I'll make a motion right now, you say 685, you say about 586 is what we've spent.
565. I mean, I
565.
could add it up to, the dollar.
I'll round it up
by
to
tomorrow.
600.
Yeah.
I'll round it up to 600,000.
Right.
Okay. All right.
It gets us
'cause
through what we spent already.
get you through to what we spent already. And then if something pops up where we need 90,000, we can come in on a bypass procedure so that nobody's held up. And then the executive and the commissioners can get together on, there's no question it's budgeted for the rest of the year, but the executive and the commissioners can get together and try to work out whatever these differences are. But I would do that. In fact, I'll make a motion that we approve $600,000 in part because that's money that we've already spent based on this recommendation from the Finance Department for Facilities and Operations. That's my motion.
Technically, you can't make that motion.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor, so this is an amendment.
An amendment, yes.
Okay, is there support for the amendment? Okay, Commissioner Gillette supports the amendment. And do you still have the floor if you want it?
No, other than what I've said. I think this takes care of what the immediate problem is, that what we have, and maybe going forward, then we can try to get together and work out the differences between the executive and the commissioners. If there's an emergency, obviously come back here with a bypass, and that shouldn't be a problem, and hopefully maybe we can get to the bottom of it before the end of the year.
Okay, I'm on there. Does anybody have questions on the amendment? Mine's very quick. Okay. The reason I asked about the process, because that's what I'm concerned about, is the process, not what's happened. I'm concerned about the process. So this is coming from, when something goes through the different processes and it comes to you, and you forward it on to the county exec's office, I would have thought it's kind of finance's job to make sure that all the proper approvals have taken place before a check is cut. So if inadvertent or not, what I'm saying is, what I'm hearing from you is that's not what the process is. So I don't think that we can work that discussion out today. So I'm not going to try to have that discussion with you today. I think that may even be separate from what everybody else is thinking. Maybe I'll sit down with you and Executive Delden and have a discussion about the process, if that's okay, because I don't think that discussion should take place today. But you understand what I'm saying. I would think the finance department's role in any organization is if something didn't go through the proper approvals. So anyway, with that, I'm sorry, Chair Smith.
Listen, I'll support your motion and say that we'll be happy to put this again on the July agenda to talk about the next increment or complete amount based on our conversations with the executive's office. So, I mean, just to catch us up, make sure you're not falling behind, make sure there's no projects that are sitting there waiting for approval that we haven't been asked for. I'll go with this because I think it's a fair start, and I'll be happy to look at this again next month and have some meetings. Hopefully we can schedule that before next month.
Commissioner Duge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll keep it short. We just spent over an hour on carpeting, and I understand how everybody is concerned about spending money and so on and so forth. I'm not going to support this because God knows we'll talk about who knows what for an hour the next time. The problem is that who knows what chiller or what else is going to blow up by this time during the next meeting. But enough. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm not going to support it for a different reason. I don't think it's quite enough money, but I want to make sure it's clear. I'm not taking the same position that Commissioner Duge did, because this discussion has not been for an hour about carpeting. I see no speakers, so voting on Commissioner Leonetti's amendment. Oh, okay. Back up. Sorry, Commissioner Brown.
So, we were told that number was enough money to fund current obligations. Is it true or isn't it true?
The 600 will fund current obligations plus an additional $35,000 to $40,000.
All right, thank you.
The $600,000 we've spent or obligated about $565.
Okay. Yeah, well, my concern is she needs to go out and, do things for future projects before they come to us. But anyway, I see no other speakers. You're on it? Well, you're, okay, Commissioner Lucido.
I guess my question is for you. Can I do that? Sure. What number would you be comfortable with?
Actually, my indication was, let's give this and then sit down and talk about that process that I was talking about, because I think the entire concern really is around a couple of things. It's around the fact that there were no change orders on the capital project. It's around the fact that we think there may be some things that don't come to us that should. I think we can sit down and have those conversations separately, but if they're already at over 500,000, she needs money to start other processes. And so from my position, I'm going to support what they're requesting. And then I'll take the punches on it later on.
With that, Madam Chair, I'll call the question.
Okay. Please vote on Commissioner Leonetti's amendment. Okay, the motion passes 10-2 on the amendment. So now the main motion is basically the same motion with the with the numbers changed. So voting on the main motion. I'm sorry, I didn't announce the no votes were Kleinfeld and Duge.
They're going into closed session. We'll talk, while they're in closed session, we're gonna talk about this, which is a non-item.
Okay, so the vote on the original motion, it just went away. It was 11-1 with Commissioner Duge voting no. Okay, thank you. All right, so that was C, correct? Okay. Then the next item is the closed session. And it's a closed session to discuss confidential memorandum and specific pending litigation regarding case 2017002261-CZ, Springer v. Macomb, and 2018001252-CZ, Hackle v. Macomb County Board of Commissioners, and attorney-client privilege. Is there a motion? Moved by Kraft, supported by Lucido. Please vote. All right. We're back in open session. Resolution 18-1552 regarding transfer of surplus funds, Macomb County Delinquent Tax Revolving Fund to the General Fund for the County Road Repair Projects and Memorandum of Understanding. We don't have anybody in the audience with us anybody to present. Is there a motion? Motion by Drillette. Okay, so you're making a substitute motion for the revised version that was in our packet. Is there support? Kraft. All right. I'm looking to see if there's are there any speakers? There are no speakers on this. All right, please vote. Oh yeah, it's been peachy. The motion passes 10-1 with Commissioner Duge voting no. Resolution 18-1683 urging action to create stricter regulations and enforcement for the maximum allowable truck weight limits to protect major roads and highways. Is there a motion? Moved by Commissioner Leonetti. So everybody wants to support this, and support by Commissioner Brown. Would anybody like to speak to it? I'm going to call on Commissioner Lucido.
I'll speak very briefly. Michigan's, our weight limit is 164,000 pounds, where the federal standard is 80,000. And the only reason we're allowed to do that is because of a grandfather clause. Obviously, our roads are in bad shape, and this could perhaps help limiting it, or a tougher fine. Something has to be taken into place to enforce the guidelines to protect our roads. Joe,
Thank you.
wanna add
I don't
anything?
see any other speakers. I
No?
thought Commissioner Kraft. I see him. I'm sorry, Commissioner Gillette. I'll catch you next time.
Am I going for it? All right, thank you, Madam Chair. I know Commissioner Drillette always likes to hear some opposition to these resolutions, so I guess I'm going to be the voice of that opposition. I was researching this a little bit, and I ended up on the MDOT website at Frequently Asked Questions, and the question was, I have heard that Michigan truck weight laws are the most liberal in the nation. Is this true? Followed by the answer. Michigan permits trucks up to 164,000 pounds on the system. However, different than other states, Michigan requires a lower weight per axle, which more evenly distributes the load and reduces wear and tear on roads. MDOT engineers have thoroughly studied this issue, and the result of this research is that heavier trucks do not cause a disproportionate amount of damage as long as the weight is evenly distributed over an appropriate number of axles. Additionally, trucks over 80,000 pounds make up only less than 5,000%, or sorry, woo, that's a big percent, 5% of all trucks operating on our roads. If Michigan were to reduce its truck weight laws to 80,000 pounds, more damage to the system may occur because of the need to put more trucks on the road. More trucks on the road raise serious questions concerning safety and traffic congestion. Several other states are currently looking at Michigan's axle weight laws and are considering adopting similar laws. Just wanted to throw that out there for Commissioner Gillette. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Commissioner Gillette.
I'll withdraw.
Oh, I'm so confused. Chair Smith.
Thank you. Commissioner Kraft? Commissioner Kraft, who gave that answer, if you don't mind? Was that the MDOT?
That's straight from MDOT, yes.
All right. So a couple things. We did, Andrew from years past did a research project for me and looked into this, and there's a whole, bunch of pages of research on this. And, there are arguments on both sides of this that the axle thing and the weight distributed more evenly. So there's opposite sides of even that fact, right? So, you can look at it and say 100,000 pounds over this distance is still 100,000 pounds in that distance. So we can look, and I'm going to have Patty look into this and maybe send everybody that he did a really good project on it. But listen, we've talked about this before, and I've talked about it with people who are lobbyists up in the area, and basically what they say is the people that are in the trucking have huge money for lobbyists, and this is something that we're going to just bump our heads against all day long, number one. Number two, the big problem is enforcement. It isn't following the rules, so let's just say that the disbursement is a better thing. The problem is, when's the last time you've seen a weighmaster on the side of the road pulling somebody over? When's the last time you've seen one of them open on the highways? The problem is, again, with the lobbyists and getting money for that type of a program for our police departments, which really fund themselves, is looked bad upon up in Lansing because the lobbyists push against it for these people. So I'm just telling you some research that I've done and found out from people in Lansing that big problem is enforcement. And maybe the road weights, the weight isn't the problem as much, but that we have a lot of people going over the weights for the trucks and the axles that they have too.
Hold on, Commissioner Romano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know if anybody else has seen it, but I've seen it many times because Mound Road is my home ground. You ever see one of these trucks stutter stop on that pavement, especially when it's blacktop? They actually give you a washboard effect. You'll have ripples in the actual blacktop, regardless if that weight is distributed or not. That they're going to give a stutter stop will pull that pavement up into a washboard, and that's where the problems start at. The other thing is, why not go overweight when you get a very minimal fine, and you can add another 10,000 pounds to your truck, and by the time you deliver that, you're picking up an extra $20,000 or $30,000 for that extra weight, and you're paying that $2,000 fine, which is very minimal. So I'm totally and completely in support of this. If nothing else, I think we owe it to the constituents to know that at least we're looking at it and that we're concerned about it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Commissioner Lucido.
Excuse me. Just one more brief statement is there's research showing that the higher the axles, the higher the crash rate as well. There's a the US DOT, so not MDOT, but US DOT found that in particular 6-axle, 97,000-pound trucks in Michigan had a 400% higher crash rate than standard 80,000-pound configurations. So it's just something to think about.
Since we're all picking on Commissioner Kraft, my position is really simple. people cite studies this way and people cite studies this way. Our roads are worse than any roads I've been on, and I do a lot of driving. I drive out to Montana. I've got family all over the United States, and our roads are horrendous. And so if this might fix that, then I'm going to go to do that. And the fact that nobody else is allowing it tells me something. That's all I have to say. And so now it's time for Commissioner Kraft to respond.
I really just wanted to respond to Chair Smith really quick on all my trips back and forth to Lansing. The motor carrier enforcement are out in force, and they have trucks pulled over all the time. There's a weigh station that is open on I-75 just north of Great Lakes Crossing. So just wanted to clarify that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Brown.
You obviously haven't driven through Sterling Heights recently, because that roads are terrible. 14 Mile Road is like, it's worse than my worst dirt road in northern Macomb County. My poor dirt farmers up there, big holes in roads, but they're worse on Mound Road. 14 Mile Road's terrible. And that truck weights have something to do with it, and people perceive it to be, it's like the old argument, the Road Commission tells you that speed isn't dangerous. You can put 55-mile-an-hour speed limits through residential areas, and they swear up and down it's safe. But the common sense tells me it's not safe. But they insist upon it. Same thing with this weight argument. I go with the perception rather than what stated facts from higher authorities are in this case. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown's Chickens would not approve a 14-mile. Commissioner Toko.
Thank you. Are we going to, is the whole board going to sign on to this to send it?
Well, it doesn't sound like it.
So I'd like to be added for an individual signature on it.
Okay. All right. Anybody that wants to be, why don't we just have anybody that wants to be added, see Patty after? Okay, we'll do that. All right, I don't see any other questions. Oh, Commissioner Gillette.
Sorry, everybody, but I've seen studies on both sides. I don't know what to believe. It's nice when there's, again, testimony. This is why I'm a little reticent to vote on issues that are sort of outside of our county purview. It's a little bit, but I understand the concern. I understand the roads are a very top concern. If this was just about enforcement of our existing, because I agree that we don't see any enforcement out there, I think that would be an easier thing to vote on. I just don't feel I've got the road engineering expertise to say that MDOT is wrong and that MDOT is incorrect about spreading the weight over a wider number of axles. I just don't know. So, thank you.
Okay, are there any other commissioners? All right, please vote. Motion passes 9-2 with Commissioners Kraft and Drollet voting no. Okay, next we have new business. Does anyone wish to speak? Woohoo! Okay, that's exciting. Public participation. Does anyone wish to be heard? Does anyone wish to be heard? Seeing none, we'll close public participation. Motion to adjourn by Druge, supported by Drollet. All, please vote.